Fedora 44 is here, and today we're going to take a look at the KDE Plasma Edition. This is one of the most polished versions of Fedora KDE I've used so far, and with Fedora 44 it feels like KDE is no longer just one of the Fedora options. It feels like it's a first-class desktop experience. Fedora has always been known for giving you newer Linux technology without completely throwing away stability, and KDE Plasma has been on a roll lately, especially with Plasma 6, maturing release after release. So in this video, we're going to take a look at the desktop, the default applications, what's new in Fedora 44, what's new specifically for KDE users, and whether Fedora 44 KDE is something I'd actually recommend. Starting with the basics, Fedora 44 KDE gives you very clean out-of-the-box experience. Dolphin is the file manager here. If you ever used KDE before, you know how powerful it is. It can look simple at first, but once you start using split view, tabs, previews, network locations, and all the little customization options, it becomes one of the best file managers on any desktop. Then there's Discover, KDE's software center. Discover lets you install applications, manage updates, and handle desktop add-ons in one place. It's not always my favorite software center in the Linux world, but it has improved a lot. And on Fedora KDE, it feels very integrated into the rest of the system. Fedora 44 also has a nice under-the-hood change here. Package Kit now uses DNF5 as the backend. Now let's talk about what's actually new. Fedora 44 brings a lot of general updates across the entire distribution. Some of them are desktop-facing and some are more under the hood. For KDE users, the big picture is this. Fedora 44 KDE ships with KDE Plasma 6.6.4. Means you're getting a modern Plasma 6 desktop with newer accessibility options, visual refinements, better customization, and a more complete first-run experience. There are also general Fedora 44 improvements, including OpenSSL certificate handling improvements, Ansible 13, Maria Database 11.8, NTSYNC support for select packages like Wine and Steam, which can help with compatibility and performance for some Windows games and apps. But for this video, I'm mainly focused on the desktop experience, because that's what you're going to feel every day. Here's the system I'm testing this on. And we'll run a fast fetch here. You can see we're running Fedora 44 KDE. That's the big key here, is we're on Plasma 6.6.4. The system feels fast, responsive, and very familiar if you've ever used Fedora KDE before. But the polish is definitely better this time around. Inside the About page, you get the usual KDE system overview. Fedora version, Plasma version, KDE frameworks, Qt, kernel, graphics platform, processor, memory, and GPU information. This is one of the small things that KDE does very well. It gives you a lot of information without making you dig through multiple menus or terminal commands. Visually, Fedora KDE still feels like KDE, customizable, flexible, and very user-controlled. You can leave it exactly as it ships, or you can change almost everything: panels, themes, icons, accent colors, window decorations, shortcuts, effects, and workflows. That's one of the reasons I like KDE on Fedora specifically. Fedora gives you a modern Linux base, and KDE gives you the freedom to shape the desktop around how you work. Installing Fedora is also pretty straightforward. I recommend using Fedora Media Writer. You download the tool, plug in the USB drive, pick the Fedora KDE image, and it writes a live version of Fedora to the drive. From there, you can boot into the live environment, test things out, and install it on your machine if everything looks good. Fedora says you only need a 4 gig USB drive, while most Fedora variants recommend 40 gigabytes of disk space and 4 gigs of RAM, though more is obviously better. I still think Fedora Media Writer is one of the better beginner-friendly tools in the Linux space, because it removes a lot of the guesswork. The install process in Fedora 44 KDE is simple and clean, and one of the bigger changes this time around is the new onboarding flow. Fresh Fedora KDE 44 installs now use Plasma Setup and the new Plasma Login Manager. The goal is to make the experience feel more cohesive from the first boot onward, instead of feeling like a collection of separate pieces. That might not sound exciting on paper, but it matters. First impressions are huge, especially for people who are new to Linux. So what's actually new with Fedora 44 KDE? The short answer is it's a lot less about a flashy feature and it's more about refinement. Fedora 44 gives you a newer base, which gives you more support for newer hardware. There's gaming related improvements with the NTSYNC. Fedora KDE 44 ships with Plasma 6.6.4, and there are a bunch of useful changes here. You can create custom global themes by saving your current theme setup. There are more accent color options, including tint intensity for window frames. You can now connect Wi-Fi networks by scanning QR codes. You can adjust per application volume directly from the task manager. Spectacle can do OCR scanning on images to capture text, and screencasting gets a per window filter from the title bar menu. And that's kind of the story with Fedora 44 KDE for me. For me, it feels like it's becoming the flagship edition. KDE Plasma has also continued improving the Wayland experience, GPU handling, and overall desktop smoothness. On my setup, animations feel responsive, window movement feels smooth, the overall desktop feels more consistent. Now, GPU experiences can still vary depending on your hardware, especially if you're using NVIDIA, but KDE on Wayland has come a long way. Fedora's new kernel and graphics stack also help here, because Fedora tends to ship newer desktop technologies sooner than a lot of conservative distributions. So if you tried Fedora in the past with KDE and you thought it felt a little rough, I would highly recommend that you give Fedora 44 KDE a try. Accessibility also gets some nice attention in Plasma 6.6. Fedora KDE 44 includes Plasma 6.6 features like a new grayscale filter for color blindness correction, a screen magnifier that tracks the mouse pointer, slow keys, and reduced motion settings. This is one of the areas that Linux as a whole really needs to improve, so I'm glad the KDE team has stepped up. They're not just adding features for the sake of a changelog, but they're actually improving the desktop for more people. Another major Fedora KDE specific change is the new Plasma Login Manager. This replaces the older feeling login experience with something that better matches Plasma itself. It makes the system feel more unified from boot to login to desktop. That sounds minor, but when the login screen, the setup flow, and the desktop feel like they all belong together, that makes the whole operating system feel more professional. So what do I think about Fedora 44 KDE Edition? I think it's one of the best releases yet. It gives you a modern, fast, customizable KDE Plasma experience, and it doesn't feel experimental. That said, Fedora KDE still isn't for everyone. There's lots of customizations that would probably feel overwhelming if you're new. For an advanced user, that's fine. That's actually a good thing for an advanced user, but for someone new to Linux, I can see where that could be overwhelming. To me, Fedora is a nice sweet spot in between Debian and Arch. Debian doesn't receive updates very often. Arch, on the other hand, receives updates every day. And then you've got Fedora in the middle. So you're going to have updates, but not as frequently. For most people, that sweet spot is Fedora. For me, Fedora 44 KDE hits a really nice balance. It feels current without feeling reckless, it feels powerful without being ugly, and it feels much more polished than Fedora KDE did a few years ago. If you're already a Fedora KDE user, Fedora 44 seems like an easy upgrade. If you're a KDE fan looking for a clean, modern distro, this should be on your short list. And if you're coming from Windows and you want something familiar, powerful, and customizable, Fedora KDE 44 might be one of the better options. Especially now with the login experience, it just seems like a more complete desktop. Let me know what you guys think about Fedora 44 KDE in the comments. Are you using it? Are you sticking with GNOME? Or are you on a completely different distro? I'd love to hear what your experience has been. And that's going to do it for today's video. If you found the video helpful, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Here are some other videos you might find helpful as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.